Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of What's Driving Token Prices. I'm your host, Katie Talati, Director of Research at Arca. For those joining us for the first time, I'm responsible for identifying and analyzing digital asset and blockchain opportunities for Arca's funds. As part of our research, my team and I examine token prices and the market events that act as catalysts for price change. Based on our research and market events over the past week, here are some notable token price moves and what we think drove these moves. As a reminder, this commentary is not intended to be investment advice, investment research, or an investment recommendation. Please consult your investment professional for your own circumstances. Well, guys, as many of you know, if you've been tuning into my episodes for the last couple of years, I usually talk about the market at a high level, and then we'll talk about specific tokens. But if you did not hear, we had some crazy major events that happened in the digital asset space this week. So I'm actually going to have a slightly different format this week, still talking about tokens. But there are so many that were involved in this week's exploit that I had to kind of expand. So first up, I'm going to talk about kind of what happened at a broad level and then who was impacted. So Saturday afternoon, hackers who are now believed to be North Korean agents were able to mint 292 million worth of rsETH, which is a liquid staking version of Ethereum. So the hackers were able to mint this rsETH by exploiting the bridge between Ethereum mainnet and Unichain, which is a layer 2, and that is secured by LayerZero's bridging technology. So specifically, hackers were able to manipulate what is called the decentralized verifier network, DVN for short. And that's essentially a network of nodes that says, hey, we verified that this transaction is accurate before allowing it to pass through. However, in the case of KelpDAO's setup, they only had a one-of-one verifier or a single DVN network setup. The hackers, as a result of this, only had to manipulate this one node and were able to then mint rsETH for without having any backing to it or any collateral that they provided in return. They then took the rsETH and took out loans against the rsETH on Aave and swapped it for ETH. So since rsETH, though, is considered a very legitimate form of collateral in most places, on lend borrow protocols, Aave worked as intended, swapping that rsETH for ETH. The hackers were then able to use this legitimate ETH and trade it away elsewhere. So the hack happened really quickly within like a span of like 15 minutes or less. And at first, KelpDAO was quick to kind of like raise or pause their protocol, but Aave, it took them a little longer to pause the impacted markets. And as a result, while word spread that this hack had happened, it essentially created the effect of a bank run on Aave, where users who had just deposited ETH were like, they were told just get your ETH out. So people went to Aave, took their ETH out. So on top of the fact that they were saddled with what is considered about $200 million of bad debt, they also had to face underutilization in their pools because people pulled out their deposits, essentially really locking capital up because there isn't liquidity now for people to pay back their loans and take their ETH out or take their deposits out without loans being paid back. So when this happened, like I said, this caused this bank run issue. And this is specifically because Aave uses a pooled architecture, and users who deposit ETH were exposed, even though they didn't think this, so they were exposed to other kind of ETH related pools that became depleted and locked. So this, like I said, has created an unfortunate dynamic. On Sunday, though, LayerZero came out with kind of their own incident report after reviewing the exploit, and they laid the blame at KelpDAO, saying that they elected to use this single DVN setup, despite LayerZero's recommendation that a more secure DVN setup was required. Now, important to note, though, that LayerZero operates that DVN setup on KelpDAO's behalf. So they were actually the ones who were manipulated technically by the North Korean hackers. So KelpDAO has refuted LayerZero's claims, and as of now, it sounds like it's going to play out in a bit of a legal battle between the two of them to see, kind of who was correct and who was right. Now, meanwhile, Aave is facing roughly $196 million worth of bad debt after loaning out that ETH against the collateral that is now worth $0. So Aave's system has an insurance fund, which is called umbrella coverage, and it just won't cover the full amount. I think it's got like $40 or $50 million in there. So that does not call over the full amount of the losses. So the question really now is like, who covers these losses? Is it KelpDAO, LayerZero, Aave? And do the losses, if they aren't, backstopped essentially by one of these entities, is it, socialized across all of the users on all of Aave's chains? Or is it just the ones that are on the impacted chains? Because again, Aave, like I said, it has a multi-chain distribution. And so it really, there's ETH on all these different chains that could be impacted. So Aave's risk manager, Llama Risk, they actually published a governance proposal Monday. And they outlined kind of scenarios under which this hack will be handled. So nothing's been decided yet. It just really depends, like I said, kind of how this happens. But it does seem that we're probably looking at least at one legal battle and definitely one big question for governance in the meantime. Late Monday evening, Aave did unfreeze the Ethereum mainnet market for ETH. But like I said, utilization is at 100%. So there's essentially no liquidity to withdraw. But the damage has been very swift in this case. And it's much further reaching than just the $196 million of bad debt. Outside of the stolen funds, Aave has seen $15 billion in TVL drop since the hack on Saturday. That is a 34% decrease. And $22 billion in DeFi TVL has also exited since Saturday. Like I said, this is just really rocked the digital asset world because Aave was really has been long considered one of the safer, more resilient DeFi protocols. LayerZero has been considered one of the premier bridging and interoperability protocols out there. It is leaving a lot of questions for how this is handled now. Really reflects on the digital asset space, its maturity, and it's ready for institutional investors to come in and use it at scale. So we're going to see how this plays out. To give you context, though, the KelpDAO's kernel token is down 20%, Aave's token down 12%, and LayerZero's token is down 17% over the last week. Okay, so following into this same story of what's been going on, the Arbitrum Security Council, which presides over the Layer 2 protocol Arbitrum, decided late Monday to freeze assets held by the attacker's wallet, which is about 30K worth of ETH, and transfer them to an intermediary wallet. So of the 116,000 worth of ETH that was stolen, about that 30K amount of it was transferred to Arbitrum and the other was kept on Ethereum mainnet. So the council said that they're planning to transfer these assets to the appropriate parties after a resolution for the hack has been reached. Again, this move raises a lot of concerns about decentralization, obviously, since Arbitrum basically just froze their chain, basically just took funds out of a user's wallet. But Arbitrum does claim that they consulted law enforcement in this case, and they weighed their commitment to users before taking this action. The market has rewarded the Arbitrum token, though. It is up 15% on this week as a result of this. Okay, last up, I'm just going to talk very broadly about some of the other protocols that were impacted by this week's exploit. So I've got Lido DAO, Euler, Compound, Fluid, Spark, and Morpho. So these are the other impacted DeFi protocols. Liquid staking protocol, Lido DAO, specifically, they operate an Earn ETH vault, which had significant exposure to rsETH and the ETH lending strategies on Aave. So they've had to pause new deposits to their vault. That says about 23% of the vault had exposure currently to the rsETH. So it'll depend on how, again, people are repaid to see what that haircut for Lido is. In the case of Euler, Compound, Fluid, Spark, and Morpho, these are all lend borrow protocols. They had to also pause their markets associated with rsETH because since so many of them integrate with each other and with Aave, all very interconnected. And so a lot, while many of them saw different inflows and outflows in the last 7 days, in some cases, they saw up to 30% of outflows of TVL since last week. Again, kind of a mixed bag for performance. Most of these protocols are up because the market overall has been doing well, but Lido up 5.6%, Euler up 22%, Compound up 1%, Fluid up 24%, Spark up 69%, and Morpho up 6.6% to end the week. Well, guys, that was quite the coverage for this week. I really hope you enjoyed our insights. Tune in here again next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific to hear what's driving token prices.